Our show is supported by viewers and listeners just like you on patreon.com/SAASholes. Brent Keltner's Winalytics Revenue Acceleration Playbook Masterclass. In only 8 weeks, help your sales and go-to-market teams start to build the mindset and skills needed to succeed in the new buyer environment. Weeks 1 to 3, read the book and learn a new approach through 20 successful company stories. Week 4, all go-to-market team kickoff and receive self-reflection questions and mindset self-assessment. Weeks 5 to 7, collaborative sessions with prospecting, sales, and customer success on the shared journey to a new mindset. Week 8, all go-to-market team presentation and discussion. Winalytics, build the revenue organization you want. Request a free 60-minute growth consultation at winalytics.com. Ask for Brent and say Big Pete sent you.
Pete, how are you?
What's going on, Steve Bosset?
I'm getting my first cup of coffee of the morning, so life is very good right now.
Oh, good. How's California? Did it go into the ocean yet?
Now it's gonna be, it's gonna burn up. I grew up. I'm a native Californian. It was always the threat of an earthquake, right? And then the threat of the receding coastline. Now I'm like, it's not gonna matter. It's gonna burn up.
Unless they start paying Carney, I'm blocking that thing out. Kiss my ass. So California, 70.
Well, you got to publish the podcast so I can get them to pay.
Yeah, for like the last 3 years. I'm putting Salesforce up there. Screw you guys.
Shameless.
Shameful.
Well, you don't see how he dresses for like.
You
You haven't seen Jamie when he shows up like a NASCAR driver and he's got like brands all over.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you cannot wear that hat.
Steve, question: Why the election was a week ago? Why is only 76% of the California votes in? Like, what the hell are you guys doing over there?
God only knows.
All right,
I have no idea.
but I mean, everybody gets a mail-in vote there, right?
Yeah, and most people like my vote was counted 4 days before the election.
Yeah.
They're shipping in 10 million votes
I don't know.
to cover the big conspiracy theory that I keep reading about.
What conspiracy theory?
How did 10 million votes disappear from 2020 to 2024?
Well, it's 15 million, but who's counting?
Yeah.
So
What cracks me up on that, and then we'll move on, right, is there's no concept that voter turnout shrinks and expands. It always has. I mean, the greatest example of that is local elections. If you have a minute local election, and maybe it's city council and whatever, no one shows up.
well, unless you pay for it, that's why Kamala is over $1 billion into it, bussing people in. I mean, in the old days in Chicago, yeah, you would take the van out, go to the taverns, buy somebody shot and beer, and bring them in, and
Yeah, they called it the get out the vote.
yeah, get out the vote. So now the money's out, and that's it. So they had more. I can't believe Biden spent more than $1 billion in 2020. But I digress. What is this? What is this topic, Carney?
All right. So Steve called me yesterday and said he wanted to talk about how there's a major disconnect in the larger corporations between ops, sales leadership, and sales reps. And I agree. The bigger you get, the more distance there is, and there's not as much team selling as compared to smaller and medium-sized companies where everybody's all in on every deal.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, Pete, which is it's not just the team selling. I mean, if you think about it, and Jamie, you chime in, you're a professional in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Ops is supposed to serve sales. And
can I pause right there? Ops
yeah.
Everyone is supposed to serve sales.
Yeah. Well, that's I agree.
If your company isn't selling, then it's not thriving. And if you're not contributing to helping make the sale easier, either through product enhancements, product improvements, and making it easier, then we should look at that person and that division and say, why do we even have that person here?
Carney, are you trying to be like doing your impersonation of the teacher on Charlie Brown? Like, what is it with your microphone? Where
Is
are
my
you?
microphone bad? I'm at,
Yeah, it's not very good.
And quit chewing gum. It's almost as bad as you're eating lunch on the show. This is a video podcast, you know.
such a pain in the ass.
Pain in the ass.
Better?
Doing this 4 years.
Is this better? I'm
Yeah,
remote.
yeah.
That's
it's
a lot.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
so
you.
much better.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm remote. I got it.
All right. So
Okay,
here's-
fine.
let's go back to your comment, Jamie, because I read, you know, I wish I saved all the things I've ever read in my life, but a guy wrote a really cool article saying, this was like 20 years ago, saying, look, everyone in the company's responsible for selling, but his experience is that doesn't happen. And what he went on to say was, like, most companies put a wall around sales. It's like it's up to the sales group to figure out how to sell it. And obviously there's, ops and maybe marketing helping, but in terms of like development and, in all my days, the customer experience, an improper billing and invoicing causes issues. But sales leadership never goes to the finance department and goes and tells them, you got to stop messing up the invoicing. It's disrupting our relationship. I agree with you in the sense that in a perfect world, everybody in the company is an advocate for selling their products or services within the market. I just don't think that all the departments buy into that. And that's why, like, for this discussion, I'm like, I'm not even, in my experiences, at a very simple level, at a large company, sales leadership, they've got the revenue number that they got to hit. They hire an ops person to offload the things that they, quote, don't like to do. And then maybe it's even further bifurcated with a sales enablement person that the ops person doesn't want to deal with. So we'll throw like content, training, those types of things in sales enablement, maybe even tools fall under that leader. But nobody's really asking the frontline salespeople what they want. I don't see that happening very often.
We all know what you want.
Yeah, but isn't
Lower quotas and higher variable. Like if I ask a rep, what do they want? Less quota, more variable, pay me more.
It
I think-
depends. Is it a newer offering or is it a legacy company where you bolt on things? That means you have 40 million PLUs that are you selling an experience or are you selling this?
I can only speak for the broad-based tech companies
no. I meant
that I've worked for.
So like not a
So we-
traditional proposal.
so we-
it's like how long
Are you in a coffee shop, Jamie? Oh my God. He's got an audience that he's not showing us. I lost my whole train of thought, Pete. Help me out here.
Are we selling a bolt-on
Yeah, thank you.
or is it, an experience?
Let me answer it this way. In large in companies that have been around for a couple decades, and they've got a clearly defined customer base, not prospect, customer base. 80% of their revenue is from existing customers. So yeah, they're wholeheartedly trying to sell more goods and services into their existing customer base. And there's been all kinds of ways to do that, right? If you're a software company and you want to put forth an enterprise licensing arrangement, create shelfware, but the customer has access to a bunch of stuff as long as you drive user adoption, it's good for both parties, right? Ultimately, it's good.
I'm just going
Agreed,
back.
but who's the better seller?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're bolting on, I don't think you're as great of a seller as a hunter that's going out and getting new logos.
Fair enough. Fair
Right.
enough.
And so, in a lot of big mature companies, you're basically, for the most part, doing bolt-ons for these huge companies.
Although there's a
right? You're more of an account manager.
so you bring up a good point, but there's also it makes me think of absolutism. In other words, I'm a wholehearted
I
believer
like
in
Stoli.
yeah. Grey Goose for me. Look, everyone makes these comments, but there's a whole bunch of corner cases and edge cases. So in other words, while I agree that hunters and farmers are two different animals, where I've seen the most effective, massive enterprise licensing agreement is when you turn a hunter loose on an existing customer who then goes and looks at it and goes, here's what we're selling them. Here's the average revenue over the last 10 years. I want to take this up an order of magnitude. And then the hunter doesn't worry about hurting people's feelings in the existing relationships, goes and changes the messaging and the engagement level and upskills it maybe to the CEO, CFO, or even the board, and changes the whole dynamic and does a massive deal. Far greater than anybody's ever done at that particular customer.
We
I give those folks credit.
we've had a unique experience where we've gone from selling a classified advertising or direct advertising product that morphed into a software where we were getting, fractional income bookings coming in and trying to turn that into a consistent revenue stream. And that's kind of where all these bolt-ons or add-on different products where we're trying to get more money to come in. But then what the sales reps would do, depending on the comp plan, they would push these bolts over here and forget it over here, and you're just moving money around. Isn't that right, Carney?
You always want to blame the comp plan, right?
When we've talked about this.
I agree. The comp plan
Well,
does some things, but for the most part, you gotta expect people and leadership to drive certain behavior. Comp plan can only drive so much behavior. And in my opinion, the more simplified comp plan you have, the better. Stop putting all these bolt-ons on it, stop putting all these caveats on it, and say to the leadership, lead, don't manage.
but it's also the product offering, isn't it? Because kind of what in the transition from advertising to software, I had to say, okay, what is the current revenue stream coming in? So whatever I do, whatever the offering is, there's a baseline that as long as I don't go below it, I'm not doing any harm. And if I can simplify the offering by including everything in on a monthly price, whatever the problem that the client has, here is the solution because it's already included. There's less to think about on the buyer and the seller side. Are things too complicated now?
Yes, because we decided to make it complicated.
But let's tie that in, Bill. Let's go back to what we started our discussion around, the three groups, so to speak, right? And the disconnect between them. Because
Well, that's three groups again.
I mean, for
because sales leaders, in my opinion, are focused on closing what's in front of them and hitting their number in the quarter and number for the year. But they're not as much focused on making sure the reps that need the help are working on it. They're usually super repping a lot of deals, is what I see, right? And especially in enterprise sales, it happens a lot.
that term.
Wait, hold on, that's a new buzzword. What's super?
Yeah, you haven't heard that? Jamie,
Super
fire
rep.
away, and I'll support supply.
It's when a sales leader jumps on basically every sales rep's call and sort of becomes the voice, with the sales rep sort of almost becoming a coordinator of meetings.
Wow. So if there's any layoffs, that leader's got to go.
No,
that leader stays.
That leader stays because they're super repping everything. I had one rep that he got rep of the year. They moved him into a sales leader at a company, not our former company. So you can do the math if you look at my LinkedIn resume. And he became leader rep of the year, or sales leader of the year. And all he was doing was super repping all the stuff that he sold. Early, he piped Jen early in this new territory. Then he gave it to reps and he basically lost money. He would have made over $1 million if he just stayed a rep.
Yes.
Instead, he became a sales leader and basically screwed himself out of about $500,000. And he sold all the deals.
Where are you at, McDonald's?
I'm at a Lifetime. It's a
Oh.
workstation, but they're doing work on
Are
it.
you going to pop on 135? Come on, put the camera on. Let me see it, Carney. Give me 135. 245s on each side. Let's go.
I'm at a work part of the Lifetime. There's a guy working on something right behind me.
Yeah, it sounds like
It's
he's
like
got
a
a nail
WeWork.
gun. Is that a nail gun?
He does. It just happened, like literally when we started this call.
Fabulous.
Okay. All right.
Let's go back though. Hey, look, there's if you break it down, right? So to Jamie's point, sales leaders are trying to get the number. They're trying to get to the number. And then you got a bunch of salespeople selling. And then you've got some ops, you got ops people in between who are, and Jamie, this is your space, but I'll just sort of give you my rep view, right? The ops people are serving in a way, maybe a couple different masters. I mean, ultimately they're serving the sales leadership on, hey, what is it you guys want us to provide to help you get to the number? But then somewhere in there, what I think gets lost is the salespeople are provided with tools and training and messaging that oftentimes has no additive value at all.
But the super repping, okay. If you're a rep, if you're a good leader and you do that, what I've seen is more often than not, you have D-bags that hop on the call and screw up the deal for the sales rep more often than they help. Of course, not you, Steve, but that's kind of what I've seen. And they're trying to justify their existence by popping up on a recording.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and you'll know it. You'll know it when you hear things like a sales leader saying, I need to meet these people. It's like, wait a minute, we need to get the deal done. When you say you need to meet these people, how is that going to contribute to getting the deal done? And then and then they don't have an answer for that.
But their answer is they're going to cut. They want to show the rep how to do it, and 9 times out of 10, what happens is they offer a discount that the rep couldn't do at the end of the call.
I just had this call. I just talked to another sales rep earlier this morning, and I said, you know, when a rep's got a committed deal, let's use a nice round number. It's a $1 million deal to close in 2 months, and sales leadership goes in and says, let's pull it in. They go to the CFO and they offer it to him for 700 grand. And 99% of CFOs are going to take it if the assumption is their company's going to do this in 2 months, because now you've discounted it to a point where the cost of money makes sense, right? It's now in their favor. And my point on that is the company ought to pay the rep as if that was $1 million deal, which they don't do, Pete. They never do. And the ramifications of not doing it, I've been asked multiple times in my past lives, why are you not piping your deals till late stages? That's one of the main reasons.
I have seen this, Steve, multiple times by seasoned reps.
Yeah.
They park deals outside of the quarter that you're in or 2 quarters out. They wait until shit hits the fan, the company, and then they come in and get and negotiate I'll discount this from 1 million to 700,000 if you pay me on the 1 million. They knew that it was only going to go for 700,000. They were just waiting for the opportunity to bring this in and get paid more at a higher.
You couldn't do that at a large, Jamie, that won't fly at a large company.
I get it.
It won't fly. Which is where I've been playing the last 20 years. That was never a play where me or my peers could ever pull. I did see multiple times in my career.
But at the end of the day, what happens is we discount the crap out of something and we have a ticker tape parade for someone heroing when I think reality is they were always planning on putting it in that quarter. They just didn't want to talk about it on a forecast call. So they were burying it in an out quarter pipeline. You're not able to massage a 6-month move to close it earlier if you haven't already had those discussions. You just don't want to talk. Like every rep hates talking about the forecast, and the forecast calls every single week talking about the same deal over and over again. So they bury pipeline until they know it's got to be talked about.
Yeah, until they're confident that they think the customer's actually going to execute the deal too.
So what is teachable? This is the same bull crap that's been going on forever, and it's an all, one-off situation. What can you teach?
Stop relying on the reps. Stop relying on the story time. Start just looking at data. Stop having weekly forecast calls.
Here, let me take a breather before I got to take my blood pressure meds. What's up with Salesforce, and they're hiring 1,000 reps for the AI product?
Yeah, Agentforce. Yeah.
Yeah, what's that all about? Because that seems to me like I kind of had them for dead with Microsoft and GPT. What are they doing that there's this uptick in what they're doing? And how can that play in a role in a situation like we're talking about? Doesn't seem to me like you have to go in and beg somebody to do a deal with that.
You're going to have to beg someone to do a deal with that.
Talk to me. Why?
Well, one, people don't know how to buy AI,
Well,
and people don't know how to sell
offer?
AI. What they're trying to offer is go-to-market AI. What they're trying to offer is an inferior product, but they're trying to do a land grab while people are trying to get their.
Hey, Jamie, just can you take a second? Can you tell a guy his form is awful?
That is so funny.
So bad.
Continue. So wait, hold on. What is the end result? Like, if you're a sales rep going out there and I'm selling an inferior product, like what's different? Why do they need these 1,000 people of all the gazillion salespeople?
They're all overlays. They're overlays, dude.
Okay.
They're just going in and acting like AI experts, and they're trying to get people to be aware that, hey, we're Salesforce, we're big enough, and everyone thinks we know what we're doing.
So it's marketing.
It's purely.
I was going to say it's a marketing play. It's also a marketing play to make an announcement that I'm hiring we're so confident. It's classic Salesforce. We're so confident in our technical ability that we're dedicating 1,000 sellers to this.
Yeah. The reality is, how many of their sellers from their other products are just going to be AI sellers? And what's the really net growth in sales reps? Probably nil. Because they already have too many reps.
I think the product would be worth it if you get rid of the stupid drop downs on the percentage of likelihood. Can AI get rid of that shit?
No one looks at that, Pete. Pete, you're dating yourself. No one looks at that period.
It's just called something else, isn't it? What is it?
No, just no one looks at it. Ignores it's out of box.
Is it still there? Salesforce. Is it gone?
No, you can't get rid of it, but you hide it. Everyone hides it.
Yeah.
And what do you talk about on those stupid cadence calls each week? Everybody does them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you talking about? It's a likelihood to close, right? When am I going to get my money?
A lot of times it's just give me an update of what you talked about last week. Anything new? Let's go to the next one. Anything new? Let's go to the next one. Anything new? The necessary thing is you need to have them, because for some reason we need to report weekly on what our forecast is going to be, as if it's going to change drastically. It only changes drastically if there's something drastic happens. A big deal says no, or a big deal says we're not doing it this quarter. Steve, we've experienced that because we're while hunting. But if you're velocity selling, there's no reason to be doing weekly forecasts. If you're whale hunting, I get it, because every interaction could change the perspective of what's going on in that deal.
Yeah, but whales are 10%, right?
No, whales are 10% of the customers, usually 80% of the revenue.
No, but of your pipeline, you want 10% whales because the likelihood of close is lower.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. But in smaller companies, like smaller to medium-sized companies, that's not the case. In huge companies, yes. But in smaller companies, depending on your strategic decision making, there are companies like us that are probably 90% whales. And so that's very stressful.
Steve, I'm guessing you're at a public company. I have no idea where you're at.
You can look at my, yeah,
But
you can look at my LinkedIn.
I have no idea. But is there a difference between a startup and a public company
Yeah,
as
I think
far
there's,
as
yeah,
fresh
I mean,
rainy days?
from my, the biggest distinction is if you're working for an established public company, their customer base is solidified. So let me just be blunt, because I worked at SAP and I worked at Oracle. And so if you look at they're both really, really good companies. They both have really clearly defined customer bases because people had to make the decision from a financial system. Do I go with SAP or do I go with Oracle? At this stage in the game, there's very few existing customers switching from one to the other. There just isn't that, you know what I mean? There's not that amount of switching. And so that my experience has been like, again, I tie this into what Jamie and I are doing in our current roles. All these companies are wasting a lot of time on things that don't matter. And what I mean by that is they're worried about the messaging, they're worried about training, they're worried about all these things. When you're one of those big companies that I've worked for and you've been doing business for 20 plus years with a company, that's almost like your family. Like, you know who the crazy aunt is. You know who the really, really cool cousins are. You just know them really, really well. And what I find just really remarkable is nowhere in the sales infrastructure is anybody mapping out who all these people are. They're just not. So they're not looking. Again, you've been selling to a company for 20 years. So you should have a portfolio of who loves you, who hates you, who loves you and actually helps you get something done, who hates you but actually does things to hurt your sales growth. Because a lot of people, let's face it, whether they like you or hate you, uh, the biggest chunk of people sit on the sideline, right? They sit on the sideline and they don't take action. And so I'm just like, when I was talking to Jamie about this whole thing, I'll net it out. I look at the ecosystem that's built around supporting what I do as a frontline salesperson. And I think to myself, again, at the large companies, nobody is providing what me and my peers want. And they're going, Steve, we did this for you. We bought this stuff for you. We're doing this training for you. And my peers and me are going, this stuff is shit, guys. Who did you talk to? Who did you vet this out with? And the answer usually is no one. We didn't ask any reps. We didn't ask them. So you went in the back room, you got your ops leader talking to your sales leader, and the two of you decided what I want. Really interesting. So I should just go to the customer and use that as an example and go, you know what? You know what? This is what you should buy. And when they go, well, why should I buy that? Oh, because this is how we make decisions internally. We don't ask people, we just project. So you should buy this because I'm telling you to buy it. Steve, do you have any collateral? Do you have use cases? Do you have success criteria that you've gleaned from other customers? No, you should just buy this because that's how we make decisions at my company. I just think it's crazy to me. Like I can't understand why no one's talking between the three groups.
How would you fix it?
It-
Yeah, here's your magic
It's a
wand, Steve.
cultural problem.
Okay, what cultural do you need? Wave.
Everyone, the easy, there's always a blame situation. The easy out is blame sales.
Agreed.
Things aren't selling, blame sales. Sales, things aren't selling, blame marketing, blame comp plans, blame ops, blame this. Everyone wants to blame each other. The reality is we're all on the same team. Things aren't selling, there's something wrong. And we got to look at it as an entire team. Maybe it's the product, maybe it's sales leadership, maybe it's marketing, but it's probably all of that except for ops. It's never ops. Um, but it's probably
I
an
like the
error with
commercial.
everybody. And you got to look at it holistically rather than sit in a meeting and say, there's someone to blame. There's something in certain cases, especially in a downturn in an economy, your warts are exposed. Okay. So when the economy is growing, you can grow in spite of yourself. When the economy is on the downturn, everything that companies that were buying overlooked no longer overlook it. And that's where you got to get better at selling. So when a down economy occurs, you better look introspectively at your product, at your sales process, at your sales methodology, everything you do to go to market so that when the economy gets better, you are aligned and ready to rock. And if you're not, you're dead.
Hold on. If you can figure out E equals MC squared, why can't we figure out whatever the hell this issue is? Whether you're in up or down economy, this same crap keeps happening. Isn't there something, a common denominator here why this continuously happens?
Yeah,
I
people.
got one. I have one. I agree with everything Jamie said. But what I think happens definitely at a big company is nobody wants to admit that their program, their point of view, their tools are wrong for today's market. So it's always a defensive. Like I go back to the accountability. When everyone's accountable, no one's accountable. Because what everyone does is like if I buy a tool and I realize as maybe one of the leadership sponsors of buying this tool that it's not serving my company well. And again, I'm talking about large companies. No one wants to go back in and go, you know what? I spent a lot of money on this. It's not working. I want to recommend that we stop using it. We spent a lot of money on training for AI. Let's use this because a lot of money is going to get wasted. And they're going to have a hard time admitting like, oh, you know that Sandler training that we did? It's really not relevant for the challenges we're facing. But we just spent $450,000 on it. No one wants to admit that. And so it's really, really hard for them to grow. What's the word I'm looking for? To improve the whole operating structure because they're not willing to just jettison things that they've tried in the past and say it didn't work.
Is there a good company out there?
Very few and far between.
Pick
Few
one.
and far
Is there one
People.ai.
Yes.
besides people.ai?
I think in the large, I'll say this, Pete, because I got friends at all these large companies.
Yeah. Is there a good one?
I'm gonna answer it this way.
What are you, a politician?
There's yeah, well, because you got to define good. Like there's there's some companies
Who's having less occurrences of this crap than others? How's that?
I'll use an old one. I'm gonna answer it this way. When I had a bunch of friends that worked for Tom Siebel at Siebel when Siebel was going gangbusters. So they were growing and the reps were making a lot of money. And I would call my friends and I would go, how do you like working at Siebel? And they would go, Steve, I'm making a lot of money. How, how do you like working at Siebel? I'm making a lot of money. Dude, you're not answering my question. And then after like 3 times of me dragging it out, they would go, I freaking hate this place. I hate how Tom runs the company. I hate this place, but I'm making a lot of money. So it's a tough question to answer.
Zappos.
I don't know anything about Zappos.
Well,
The shoe business bought
are
by
part of
Amazon.
Amazon now, but they would pay for you to leave. That's a good thing.
I'm just saying define good, right?
Well,
There's
we're
companies that are
defining what
doing
bad is. I'm trying to figure out, is this just happen at every company and it's
Every company has it to a
just a
degree.
less of an occurrence? So I'm just is there a
I will
company?
say this. I was at a dinner party last week and there was 3 couples, multiple tech companies, a bunch of big ones, and everybody's over 50. And everybody said the one common theme was it's never has been fun. Like it's been every 5 years in the tech industry, it becomes less and less fun to work for the tech companies. Over what we saw in the early in our career. It's changed. It's morphed.
Well, you can compare more than back then. Back then, it was hard to compare. Now you can go anywhere and see how bad you got it.
Well, I'll tie it in with what I'm talking about. In the 90s, tech companies tried stuff. No one was worried. There wasn't the big accountability thing. They would try something. That didn't work. We spend money on it. Who gives a shit? Let's move on. They jettisoned products. They jettisoned marketing techniques. They jettisoned sales groups that they didn't, they repositioned people. We set up these different structures within our large geo regions. We don't like how we did it. They went from named accounts to geo, or they went from geo to named. But they were way more, they just moved faster in admitting that something didn't work and they moved on. And I think that helped improve everybody's morale. When you have a group of people working for a company that are pretty damn knowledgeable on what's working well and what's not. And to have the leadership go, yeah, you know what? I admit that didn't work very well. We're going to do something differently. We're pivoting. That was inspiring for the people that were working at those companies. Now, again, I'm going to keep saying this. No one admits that what they did, and I'm not asking them to get punished or anything. Just move on. What we're doing is not working. We're going to try something else. But the leadership of these companies won't do this anymore.
So is the market too efficient for analysts out there that everybody's working 90 days at a time? Is that what it is? Are the switching costs different now than back then? Like what is the issue?
That's a
You, s-
really good question.
you,
Jamie, what are your thoughts?
I think switching costs. I think admitting a mistake. Like I was just 51% of all technology that is bought at a company is never used or implemented.
that's a
Yes.
safe number to
Right?
pick.
Right?
Well,
Well, it was 1.2 trillion is what I just saw. I was looking it up.
and the
Right?
stat I always use,
People are
Jamie.
afraid to make mistakes,
Yeah, Jamie.
admit mistakes.
Jamie, you could be a pollster.
Well,
Correct.
I do know this. Less than 30%.
80% of the time I'm right.
Less
100% of the time.
less than 30% of any deployment achieves what they thought they were going to get. This has been going on forever, right?
Isn't I'm going to sum it up to this. Look, the company that can makes a lot of mistakes fast and fixes them the fastest, that's the bestest.
Yeah,
That's a great tagline.
but
The bestest
the
for the
best.
rest of us.
But I think that only happens at a small company. I don't know where the line is drawn. You know what I mean? Like, is it at 500 million that it gets messed up, or a
I think it's
billion?
drawn at Elon.
What's
Elon
that?
Musk. Elon Musk. Go to one of his companies. They literally blow up shit.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Literally.
You know what's funny is how far back technology today, new innovative technology is really not innovative at all. And I liken that. I had somebody call me up and said, "Hey, we install a chat GBT instance in your economy, in your system, and so that you can have your sales reps ask questions to it and it answers." Pete, sounds familiar, right? Sort of like the chat bot that we had going on SAASholes a while back. And I'm like, all that did was take the language model, which is innovative, and apply it to something that people have been doing for, I don't know, Pete, when did you start doing that? A decade ago? With the
Yes.
chatbot. So all they did was add the language model to that, and they're calling that innovation. Sorry, that's not innovative. But what I will say is we had cloud as an innovation that overhauled how we did things. We had social media as a innovation that overhauled how we interacted with people. I think AI, especially language models and AI, is an innovation that is going to be scary, and that's why Salesforce is hiring 1,000 reps because they know that that's the future. Now, I really think Salesforce is hiring 1,000 reps and getting rid of 1,000 reps in another one of their divisions. So they're really not hiring 1,000 reps. They're
I
just
agree with you.
saying,
Absolutely. Yep.
I
But
think
that brings up another point. Most of the big companies they're way overstaffed from a sales perspective because they're way too optimistic about expanding. If you're Salesforce and you don't have, if somebody's not a customer because they've done so well, right? It's a good company with a good product. If somebody's not a Salesforce customer today, there's a major impediment, a reason why. It is not a sales issue. Somebody hates your company for whatever reason. You've been around. It's not like people, oh, I didn't know Salesforce existed. That's you'd have to live in a cave not to know Salesforce doesn't exist.
ask our wives if they know what Salesforce is. Look, you ask
Mine
any
does.
uh, well, you got the Golden Gate behind you. You you ask any financial analyst, and I'll tell you that in a 10-year period, you're going to have 7 winners and 3 losers, right? That's just what it is. And there has to be some type of number like that for a business cycle. Why is it that all of these companies they spend all this money on training, and then when they get a revenue inflow that's below what they want, they can all these people. Why don't they just budget for it, keeping them on to be ready to keep them going? Because they're just going to have to pay the cost to get them back or more.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I mean, they all look, because my son's going through this. They're on one of the big layoffs. Now they're having to hire back some of the people that they laid off a month ago because, hey, guess what? They didn't do the analysis of who should get laid off and who shouldn't. They send it down to managers. Maybe a manager gets rid of somebody because it's like, I don't like this person. And then the company finds out afterwards, huh, this is the leading expert for whatever. Like, and we need this person back. Then they got to go rehire the person. They can't even figure out accurately the optimal people to get rid of during layoffs. That's what I find laughable.
Well, because there's no differentiation other than sales stacks.
It's because there's no check and balance on. Let me say it this way.
Success
I,
isn't defined.
I have a friend of mine who works at a large tech company up north who does a sales process, I mean, a hiring process that is very rigid in how they do their interviewing and hiring process. So my friend, when he was new, oh, I knew somebody. I'm going to call 3 people and find out the background. He got chastised for that. Like, all these companies are hiring and they don't even want to know, like, hey, this person got fired at their last company for XYZ, which you're not going to find out through HR because HR is not allowed to say those types of things. Like it just amazes me to me. Like they've all decided, I'm going to tie this in. Our process is so good. We're so good at vetting out like who the optimal people are, but they're never as good as they think they are.
Fire HR.
That's a leadership. That's not an HR. HR didn't create that policy.
Quotas will go down.
What's that?
Quotas will go down.
How would quotas go down?
He's
Not paying
once
for
again,
HR.
he's a rep always asking for lower quotas. And he always thinks quotas are out to get him.
No,
Hey, look, if
there's
I
no
keep
comment. When you ask a company what are the commonalities of whoever's buying from you, what are the commonalities of a successful person that comes in? Nobody knows.
I agree with that.
So basically, there's nothing you can say something scalable. The best that you can do is do probabilities. Well, there's a 30% chance likelihood. And it just keeps going on. And I just think it's because we're living 90 days at a time and you can't build for the future in 90 days.
Well, you touched on something that maybe we should talk about it sometime in the future, which is that like I don't think even executives are incented to make their company better. Because if you look at something that's going to take a year before the operational uptick happens, they just go, I'm probably not even going to be in this role in a year. Like if we're successful on this trajectory, I'm just going to make my replacement look better.
I would recommend anybody out there, if you're old like us, okay, find a cash flow and suck the teat till it's dry. If you're a young person, find an up and comer which has some good schedule A, B, C, whatever the hell you call it coming in. They're in growth mode and ride that sucker. Don't take advantage, but learn quickly and surf that sucker to the top.
I've
Because
had this discussion because Pete, I live in Silicon Valley, so all my kids' friends, none of them wanted to, when they got out of college, they all think, well, I don't want to work for a large company. I want to work for a startup because I'm going to be a millionaire, multimillionaire by the time I'm 30. The problem that they have is let's say that they're successful, like that they write a company and they do pretty well financially. They're usually still at the point where their skill set's lacking because now they're 30 with some change in their pocket, but they have really no clear assessment of how good they are because that rising tide thing. They end up not most of them aren't as good as they think they are.
who is? I think life is all about feedback, okay?
Yeah, yeah,
You do
so
something and you get feedback, whether it's positive or negative, operant learning, whatever you want to call it. And it just depends on the environment that you're in. If you're in a fast-moving environment, it's like a kid growing up in the city versus the suburbs. You grow up in the city, you get street smarts. What's street smarts? Multiple occurrences of feedback, okay?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Immediate feedback.
I,
A very aggressive
I
feedback.
I call that out in my area. The problem with bad behavior in my area, because it's more affluent than where I grew up,
Yes, Kamala.
is there's no feedback loop in my area.
Oh, there is when they smash your back window and take your backpack.
Yeah, I'm talking about the human behavior. I'm talking about like when when you step out of your car where I live now and you tell somebody to piss off, there's really no consequence.
Oh,
Not where I live. There's none.
okay.
But where I grew up,
Yeah.
that was a fist fight.
Oh,
So when you stepped out of your car before you opened your mouth where I grew up, you needed to decide, is it so important for me to get the last words in that I'm willing to fight over it?
you're lucky if it's a fight nowadays. So my point is,
I imagine where I grew up, it's still a fist fight.
where'd you grow up? Oakland?
I grew up near, yeah, in the East Bay.
Yeah, okay. You
let,
gotta look
let, let
at
us just
you.
say a blue collar area.
Yeah.
And when you grow up blue collar, you can think long and hard about what your response to somebody is. Because you got to figure out is, the proverbial is the juice worth the squeeze.
Hey man, you don't mess with them longshoremen over there, the Teamsters, none of them, man. You don't mess around. I hear you.
No, no. They have
So
a they have their own feedback loop.
yeah. So what is the feedback loop in a business nowadays? If you're in a more mature company, the feedback is don't make waves, suck the teat, right?
It
Yeah,
is.
I mean, if
Offer
you're in a big company,
suggestions, but don't disrupt.
they're all looking for yes men in the bigger companies. They're
It's
not
almost
looking for
predictable.
controversial meeting of people.
They'll go through, you can almost put a clock to it. They'll go through three sales leadership teams and maybe three sales ops leaders before they'll gather up and go, well, wait a minute. We've hired three sales leaders. We've had three sales ops leaders. We've done all this stuff. Maybe there's a bigger challenge. But if you're salesperson number one or number two as the leader, you're probably not going to be that successful getting somebody to acknowledge that your product's not right. Maybe there's not a market for it. You know what I mean? All these
Yeah.
factors that are non-sales execution related.
Well, I think it's just recognize that there is a machine in place. Okay. It's messed up everywhere. It's just where is it less messed up? And then what choice do you want? What type of business are you going into? You need to know that because this stuff is going to go on forever. Look, man, we could turn this podcast off and I'll come back in 5 years. It's going to be the same
I
shit.
I don't I agree with you. I'll use I'm a 49er fan.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated as hell. I
Try.
watched the game on Sunday, and they got kind of the game under control, and their special teams drops a punt return. And then they end up scoring. A couple plays later, they score, and it changes the whole trajectory of the game. And I heard a stat, I don't know if it's true, but I was listening to my local sports radio, and they said 8 of the last 10 49er games, special teams has contributed to the opposition scoring. Like special teams has messed up in a big way. So one thing I won't do, because I don't know anything about managing a sports team, coaching a sports team, or playing professional sports, right? But as a fan, I'm like, there's a problem. I don't know. It's not up to me. Like, is that a coaching problem? Is it a personnel problem? I don't know. Candidly, I don't give a shit. It's up to them to fix it, right? I got my own issues at
Well,
my career.
well, Steve,
Um,
you're bringing up a professional team, and the percentage of people that get to that level, whether you're a coach or a player, you're the best of the best of the best, versus like a sales job, depending on the company. You don't
yeah,
not you don't have to be the top 1% of 1% and 1%. You could do Pareto's
no, I agree.
principle and be top 20. So I
I'm only bringing it up, but Pete, I'm bringing it up. It's a human nature thing. In other words, I'm a huge 49er fan. I think the way they run the thing, you know, how little I know, it's a pretty well-run organization. I'm only using it as an example. It's really, really hard. First of all, they have a much smaller leadership team than a major corporation, right? But it's a human nature thing. It's really hard for people to admit, like, what we're doing is not working, and we got to do something differently.
the other thing with the pro
Super
football
hard to
league,
admit this. What's that?
the other problem with the example you brought up is the TV contract revenue because that money's coming in whether they're good or not good.
Yeah,
I
but good organizations, and again, I consider them one. Good for them is winning a Super Bowl. Like that's what they want. They're not like, look, they've been really, really good. My point is more like, God, if these to your point, these are the elite of the elite, and it's really hard for them to like. I think it's hard for people to admit that what they're doing is not working. And when I look at the sales world, and you're probably right, in 5 years, if we're still doing this, we'll be having the same conversation, right?
But I mean, that's just it. What if we
You
all
gotta,
know it?
you got a salesperson, sales ops leader hanging out with a guy with a nail gun.
So I guess the point.
I where do you go from there?
Well, maybe I should make fun of HR. Whatever the inflow of the talent pool is, that's where the money should be spent because you just need good people coming in.
Look, Jamie's even blurred himself out because,
Because he's staring at
I
the guy
blurred-
doing squats.
I'm worried that there's a nail in his abdomen and he can't talk right now.
No, I was about to say, in terms of recruiting, people are really good at presenting themselves. What the reality is when you hire them is when you realize they're not good, right?
Yeah,
Because
but
then you
Jamie,
actually see 'em.
that was my example. And the way around this is if you're hiring somebody that's 35 or 40 or older, back channel.
I know you can back channel.
They're
all you
too
want.
old. Don't hire them.
I don't agree with back channeling that much because what reality is, you back channel, you're picking a small sample size. You might be picking a person that they fucking didn't like, right? It happens. I don't like Pete half the time, right?
Those are good numbers.
Yeah, I'm probably a big proponent of Pete compared to all his other people that he interacted with. I've
Jamie,
seen Pete
get a-
storm out of conference room, slamming his hand on the ground, saying, "What the fuck am I doing here?" And this walking out, and then the two people he report to go, "Okay."
Jamie, my back channeling over my years has been highly predictive. It has been. It's been really good. I call three or four people if it's because what's going to happen is, to use your point, if I call three people and one person says, I love this person, they're fabulous, blah, 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 and one person says train wreck, then I've got sort of, it's sort of the Yelp thing, right? With somebody had a good meal and somebody didn't. But more often than not, directionally, I hear super positive things about somebody, or I hear a massive amount of negative things directionally. And it usually comes to fruition.
I think the greatest class that could be taught at a community college or somewhere, a trade school, is the ability to toss a word salad, because that I've seen it from this election. Just by speaking without saying anything will get you farther in the corporate world than anything else.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. Like, and again, maybe this is something, and selling to emotion rather than facts and results.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Because to answer your question about will we be having this same discussion in 5 years, until somebody gets pissed off enough in a position of power to recognize that the collective management style of the sales ecosystem's not working well, they're going to keep investing in what they've been doing. They're going to keep doing the same thing. They are. They have to decide, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm going to do something differently because I don't want to stay on the same treadmill.
Carney, is that going to change?
No,
Okay.
it just isn't. I mean, dude, we've been around the block enough to know.
I know.
this ain't fucking gonna change.
I'm not disagreeing with you guys at all.
Yeah, you are, Steve. You're sucking that teat.
No, I'm hunting. I'm hunting for people who will at least put their toe in the water. You know what I mean? Like, and then I'm gonna move them. I'm gonna push them forward a little bit, right? If I can.
The problem is, in the end, is the people that are proponents of change, if they're not leading the company, they're seen as not being political and being a cancer in the clubhouse when
Yep.
they are trying to and if the people that are in charge realize who these people are, they know that they're going to also get exposed. So therefore, they're trying to take those people down. If
Yep.
you're at a big company, go find the people that everyone's against that are still there. Those are the people that the company can't get rid of. I used to say I could take
That's awesome.
I used to say I could take a dump on our CEO's desk and he couldn't get rid of me.
Yeah.
And he couldn't. They couldn't at one point, I felt like. But those are the people that are probably being agents of change and the ones that everyone's depending on. And then those are the ones that, you know, I know from my experience, I get calls all the time of people like, hey, I would love to work with you again. I'd like, you know, yeah, okay, great. I don't even know who you are.
Hey guys, I gotta bounce. I got a call.
All right. We accomplished a lot here. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.